Shalom, shalom. Before I begin this lesson, I want to give all praise, honor, and the glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakah, HaKodash. Double honors to the apostles, bishop, and elders, a great millstone that rule well, and peace and blessing be multiplied on all you brethren that's teaching this word in all sincerity and in truth. All right, shalom to the hopeful elect, the 144,000, and the rest of the elect out there, shalom. I'm the brother Dama Gibar, here with another lesson, Lord willing to edify through the spirit and power of Yahweh by Yahweh Shai. And I thought this was an interesting article I got from RT that says, War on Iran sparks gas theft epidemic. It says incidents of driving off without paying in Britain are up 27%, while Americans report their fuel tanks are being drilled. And you see, and this is just highlighting, the desperate nature of man. And, we know that eventually it's going to get even worse as things get, more expensive, as things get tighter, as more disruptions occur, as, this, they've been speaking about lately, how there's going to be a famine, because of this whole Iran situation, more supply disruptions. And a lot of these countries have basically are fuel rationing because things are getting tighter, which they say is going to lead to energy lockdowns, less work for people. And it's just going to cause more perplexity of the citizens of the world, which is going to lead to what? These people resorting to more baser nature reactions. And, if these people are bold enough to just go fill up their tank and drive off without paying because, one, is more expensive to get gas, and two, because of gas shortages, how much more crazy you think is going to get when the severity, when this lockdown or these energy crises and these different situations become, get up to biblical proportions. You're literally going to see these people go absolutely buck wild out here, as I'm going to read real quick in 2nd Ezra, the 15th chapter. And you see these things are all prophesied to happen. And this is why we got to pay close attention to what's happening around the world. I did a video yesterday highlighting how, Asia, in the so-called Europe, they're going to be hit faster with this whole Iran closing of the Strait of Hormuz situation as things get tighter, as energy production goes lower. Is going to lead to famine, destitution, people not working, gas scarcity, people not being able to travel. They're going to be locking down your ability to, use public transportation. Like I said, food is going to get more expensive. Inflation, harder and harder times is going to lead to these people to eventually go and buck wild, as the scriptures say. They're as prophecy says they will be. And we can see it getting ready to take place because these people are bold enough to just drive off without paying for their gas. And Americans are reporting their fuel tanks being drilled because people are desperate for fuel and for gas. And I'm pretty sure here in California, you got a lot of that happening because gas here is fucking $6 a gallon. And it's only going to increase and get higher as that whole situation with Iran and Israel intensifies. So let's read some of this. It says, a wave of fill up and flee crime is sweeping petrol stations across the UK, while American drivers are waking up to drill through tanks and drain fuel, as the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran has sparked a spike in oil and gas prices across the globe, according to media reports and industry watchdogs. The crisis has been mostly triggered by the de facto closure of the Strait of Hormuz, a critical choke point that handles roughly 20% of the world's oil supply. The situation has been exacerbated by Iranian retaliatory strikes on the Gulf energy infrastructure, although the attacks have now been paused as part of a tentative U.S.-Iran truce, and that truce is not going to last very long. And, and they've been speaking about how, a lot of countries, especially those Asia and over there in Asia, they rely heavily on this European oil, man. Like, that helps with a lot of their manufacturing and their energy, which ultimately leads to food production and just production in general. So how crazy do you think is going to get over there in Asia and those Asian Pacific countries and in Europe, when it totally dries up, man, as this war continues on, as more infrastructure gets destroyed, and these supply chains get more disrupted and tighter, hey, people are going to get more and more desperate, man. They're going to be stealing a lot more than petrol and drilling holes in gas tanks. Pretty soon, people are going to start invading one another. All right. They're going to start waiting for you outside of the grocery store and bashing you in the head and taking whatever groceries they can get when they can't provide for their own. And we know the nature of these people out here, man. All right. What does the scripture say? Let me get this real quick. This is Matthew chapter 24, verse 12. It says, and because the iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. You see? And if these people are willing to, do this on a, as of right now, imagine when the situation gets to desperate situations, it's going to lead to everything that's written within the scriptures. And these elites are orchestrating and they're doing everything in their power to keep, this, to make things harder for people. Because why? They want to bring order out of all of the chaos that this whole situation is going to bring, man. They want to see you people at each other's throat. They want to see you basically, be in a shit hit the fan type of situation. That's why a lot of these elites are going into their bunkers. They're getting ready to go underground as the world above goes into complete chaos. Because it's all part of their agenda and their plan to bring you people into this NWO. It says the crisis has been mostly triggered. I read that. It says petrol prices in the UK have surged to over $1.58 a pound, $2.15 a liter on average, up from a pound 33 before the war, according to the Royal Automobile Club. Rising prices encourage a 27% increase in drive-off thefts, according to a crime prevention watchdog forecourt. A study by the body, which was based on data, blah, 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 blah. What else? It says at current fuel costs, motorists deliberately evading paying for fuel is costing the sector more than $100 million a year. Claire Nichol, executive director of British Oil Security Syndicate, told The Sun, adding that operators should be extra vigilant during peak periods. And pretty soon they're going to be doing more than just driving off. Pretty soon they're going to start sticking up the place. Pretty soon people are going to start putting each other to death for fuel and for petrol and for gas. Let's not mention when the famine and the food scarcity hits, how desperate and how volatile it's going to get then. A lot of people are going to be resorting to cannibalism, when it gets bad enough. It says the picture is the same across the Atlantic. As of Monday, the American Automobile Association pegged the U.S. national average at over $4 a gallon and up to $6 in California. Before the war, the AAA average was less than $3. It says on Sunday, Energy Secretary Chris Wright admitted that sub-$3 gas might not happen until next year. The comments triggered a sharp rebuke from U.S. President Donald Trump, who called the statement totally wrong, adding that the prices will fall soon as the war ends. Hey, and guess what? This war ain't ending no time soon. So you can expect the prices of these things, of gas, to go up. And like I said, it's not just gas, but everything else is going to go up. People's energy costs. People's electricity bills because of what? These data centers and artificial intelligence, the lack of, oil and gas coming into these countries as it freely used to flow before. You see? So remember, you got to think about it. If these people are already stealing gas and taking it to this measure and it's still somewhat kind of peaceful, imagine when all hell breaks loose, man. This is what we're going to see eventually happen. This is 2 Ezra 15 and 14. Woe to the world and them that dwell therein. For the sword and their destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. For there shall be sedition among men. Right, sedition is an uprising of the government, because people are going to eventually get fed up. Once people really realize that there's no relief in sight, that these governments and that the government and these politicians aren't making the situation better, when they're not going to give them answers, when they're not going to ease the pain at the pump, ease the pain in the grocery store, and people start getting priced out of their homes and can't afford life, can't afford to live, hey, people are going to eventually, there's going to be an uprising. People are going to get very, very angry, man. And it's going to lead to, seditious type of behavior, martial law, curfews, more energy lockdowns, blackouts, cyber attacks, And what else? It says, and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, in the course of their action shall stand in their power. A man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able. For because of their pride, the city shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. A man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword, and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation. You see? So if these people are already resorting to stealing gasoline and petrol, imagine when things completely hit the fan, when shit completely hits the fan, man. And there's, in this up and coming famine that's been being talked about, fully sets in. There's no food in the grocery stores. There's no more trucks running deliveries, because as you know, these grocery stores, they're only able to have 3 days supply of food. Well, what do you think is going to happen when things get really tight and the petrol and the gas get so expensive that these trucks are not going to be able to fill up and to make their daily routes around the country to bring, your fruits and vegetables, your imports and different things of that nature? It's going to lead to complete and utter survival of the fittest type of behaviors out here. You see? So like I said, this is just something to think about. If they're already resorting to stealing petrol, just filling up gas and driving off and not wanting to pay because the price is too high, what do you think is going to happen when Second Ezra, the 15th chapter, is in full effect, man? When there's no more bread, when the stores are empty, when the gas stations don't have any more gas, when the lines are around the corner. And you see that right now already in India, certain in those Asian countries that deal with a lot of public transportation, scooters, motorbikes. Now that their oil is drying up because they're not coming through every day, you see huge lines of people waiting to get fuel. And you better believe that shit's turning violent. People cutting or people, getting desperate. Can you imagine sitting in the line for 3 hours only to get, it's your turn to go, and then they tell you, oh, there's no more fuel, there's no more petrol, come back tomorrow. Hey, people are going to get pissed. People are going to get desperate. People are going to get violent, man. You see, it's going to lead to what I just read in 2 Ezra, the 15th chapter, man. So we can see, it's not just going to be for petrol thefts. You're going to have food thefts. People are going to be ransacking these stores. Like I said, people are going to be waiting outside of Sam's Club who can't afford the food, waiting for those who have money to buy it. They're going to be waiting, lurking in the corner to bash you in the head and take your cart and fill up their car with your food and keep it pushing. Like I said, it's going to eventually lead to cannibalism. People are going to be eating their pet dogs, their pet cats, whatever they can get their hands on pretty soon. But it's all prophetic. And hey, we can see these things steadily, gaining momentum. And eventually it's going to be just as bad as prophecy says it will, man. So with that, I just want to do a quick lesson on that. Just showing you, people are getting more brazen and more desperate as times get harder. And it's only going to intensify. And their audacity and their desperation and the things that they're willing to do are going to surpass even, what people thought were humanly possible pretty soon, man. Hey, so with that, Lord willing, this is edifying. I'm going to give all praise, honor, glory to Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. And until the next video, shalom.